this summer called Jade Helm 15. While the military says it's just training soldiers for the realities of war, critics say the Army is preparing for modern-day martial law. Trace Gallagher live in our West Coast newsroom with the story. Trace?
Megan, some are calling it a Texas takeover. What's happening is between July and September, a bunch of Green Berets, Navy SEALs, and Special Ops from the Air Force and Marines are conducting some realistic training exercises across the Southwest, including 17 different Texas cities. The goal is to see if groups of these special forces can move around the civilian population without being noticed. You know, blend in so they can place themselves in strategic positions to handle different threat scenarios. The military says these are vital skills when it comes to an ever-changing threat. But in the slideshow of the training exercise, it says Texas will be simulated hostile territory. Well, that hostile characterization didn't sit well with a far-right radio host in Austin who told his listeners that he had access to the secret document that details a federal takeover in Texas. A libertarian website also picked up on the plan, and before you know it, rallies were being held against the event. But apparently the so-called secret document was published weeks ago in several local newspapers, letting the public play very well in Texas.
With military helicopters flying above her southeast Houston neighborhood, Frances Gerald didn't know what to think.
You know, when you see this, you think the worst. Right. When you hear this, you think the worst.
And so she passed along her concern.
She told me, don't come home because it sounds like we're in a war zone. Guns shooting and helicopters flying around over the house.
The Army, along with other agencies, had taken over the old Carnegie Vanguard High School. There were armed men in fatigues, plenty of weapons, and what many thought were real live rounds.
I felt like I was in a war zone. It just was nonstop. So I was terrified.
Turns out it was a multi-agency training drill that Gerald's wished would have come with warning.
They could have done a better job at notifying the neighborhood.
Developments continue. The Department of Homeland Security buying ammunition, now looking to purchase another 21 million rounds of ammunition. This in addition, of course, to the 1.6 billion rounds that Homeland Security has bought in just the past 10 months. Now, to put all of this in perspective, the military used approximately 70 million rounds each year of the Iraq War. 70 million rounds in a war. Barack Obama proposed a civilian national security force. This is what he said.
We cannot continue to rely only on our military in order to achieve the national security objectives that we've set. We've got to have a civilian national security force that's just as powerful, just as strong, just as well funded.
Yeah, you got to have that, right? We're not aware of the president having created such a force. At least it's not, maybe it's covert, I don't know. But we can't help but wonder why the Department of Homeland Security should need more than 20 times as much ammunition as it took to fight the Iraq War. Our next guest says, by the way, as we look at what's happening in Washington, D.C., the unilateral power to kill Americans with drones without due process on foreign soil is simply outrageous. Joining us is Judge Janine Pirro, host of Justice with Janine. Good to have you with us, Judge.
It's good to be here, Lou.
Let's start with the drones. I mean, we heard for, it seemed like months on end, about enhanced interrogation techniques. Now, drones being used to kill American citizens without due process.
It seems that the Obama administration is determined to chip away at the Constitution. What do I mean by that? Number one, we've got the Second Amendment. We're going to stop people from buying guns. They don't have an inherent right to protect themselves. And we're going after the 14th Amendment because we are taking away life, liberty without due process of law.
The Department of Homeland Security putting out a circular on returning veterans and saying that they are most likely, this happened two years ago, saying that they are potentially right-wing terrorists. They didn't say right-wing, but terrorists, waiting to strike the homeland. Suddenly we start getting into a very cloudy area here, and it becomes a little disconcerting to think what an administration, whether this or any other, could do with that kind of power.
And when you think about the purchase of all of this ammunition, as you said, right, 20 times what we needed for the war in Iraq every year, and the fact that you want to take away people's guns, you want to kill Americans, and now what we've got is a scenario where the president is talking about a civilian national security board. What is this?
And this disappeared from all of his campaign materials. It's the fact is, it's the kind of grist for the conspiracy theorists. But the real issue is, what are we doing in this country when we are willing to suspend individual rights, due process as we understand it, when we're willing to just sort of close our eyes and not pay attention to the fact that the Department of Homeland Security is picking up more ammunition, for crying out loud, than the Marine Corps.
And you know, what's amazing is they're willing to say we're going to cut back on the Second Amendment, on the 14th Amendment, we're going to kill you without any identification of what the grounds are to kill you. And what we're going to do now is just make sure that you don't have ammunition. And by the way, it's these right-wingers over there. And make no mistake, Lou, that's who they're talking about. And the people with guns and the people who want to defend themselves, they're worried about some kind of uprising. What is going on in this country?
Worrying about an uprising or worrying about so many things, including how to maintain and preserve power that is not always a constitutional power.
Shows troops training to intern citizens in Fort Lauderdale. Martial law-style drill is caught on camera, and he points out armed troops were arresting. We're going to show you this video. We're going to talk about this in just a moment. Arresting role players on the street before a column of prisoners are marched toward a mock internment facility. You also see them being picked up and put into white vans and driven away. Some of them taken away by helicopter, apparently. Accompanied by very little media coverage, they says that it would be they would be assisting members of the U.S. Special Forces. This is what they were told when this began to happen. This is what the media told them. Said that that law enforcement is going to be assisting members of Special Forces who are undergoing urban warfare training. And they had this in various locations. The military did not disclose this beforehand. And that's what's different about Jade Helm, is that this unclassified document was hidden in plain sight, but not viral. People didn't know that was going on. They typically only tell people as this is happening or the day before. They say the goal is to prepare participants in realistic, unfamiliar training conditions before they deploy for combat overseas. Look, I don't even believe this is for combat overseas. If so, it has a dual purpose. But as Madison said, if tyranny ever comes to this land, it will come in the form of fighting a foreign enemy. That's the way this is being brought to us. So let's go and take a look at this, because to me, this is obviously training for the kinds of stuff we've been concerned about since indefinite detention by the military and rendition were passed as part of the NDAA. We've been saying that this is precisely what would happen, and now they're acting it out for us on our streets with the help of law enforcement. Because, you know, of course, in foreign countries, they're going to have, when they do this in Iran, they're going to have the cooperation of the Iranian police, right? No, they're not. No, they're not. This is for use in America, folks, and you can see this. Let's run this clip here. And as we're running this clip, I want to play for you what they were telling the Brazos County officials about Jade Helm. For those of you who can't see this is a black helicopter coming in, these Black Hawk helicopters.
No one will be staying here in Brazos County. They'll be coming in, doing the hit and extracting. Time on
doing the hit
ground
and extracting.
Maybe 15 to 20 minutes of exposure, then that's it. Then they're gone.
Can we recommend some places to you to hit?
You know, every county that we have briefed has done that for us also.
Now, what we're looking at there, we just saw somebody on the ground, soldiers surrounding him. You're going to see that person getting drug off, or somebody else being drug off in just a moment. More helicopters landing and taking off. This is a very dangerous thing to be operating helicopters at this level in a major city. I don't know if you can get, I don't think you can get FAA permission to do that normally. Now this, what we're looking at on the video right now, is a line of people being marched across a civilian American street accompanied by the military.
Unconventional warfare into a perspective, you see it a couple different places up there, unconventional warfare, and I'll explain that from a historical perspective.
Again, this is a presentation at Brazos County of Jade Helm that you're listening to.
Troops on troops, tanks on tanks, uniform enemy against uniform enemy is the way conventional warfare is generally defined. Unconventional warfare, from a historical perspective, if you think of World War II, Germany came in and they took over France. The French did not want them there. They formed the French underground. The French underground conducted activities such as subversion and sabotage. They would hit logistics lines.
Yeah, so think about Nazi occupation of France, okay? We're playing the part of the Nazis. That's what the American government is doing right now. Go ahead, keep playing that.
Moralize the Germans. So what a lot of folks don't know is there were American advisors with the French underground throughout World War II, assisting them in planning and conducting those types of activities.
Now, if you're watching this video right now, you see civilians being loaded into white vans.
United States Army Special Forces has had the charter to conduct unconventional warfare throughout
and there they go, driving them off in the white vans to the internment
centers. The last 15 years, we have been in Afghanistan and Iraq.
Seeing those kinds of abuses as we look at these exercises that are being done within America to take away civilians. You got to ask yourself, when they want to move around, when their stated purpose is to move around in American cities with Operation Jade Helm, or Jade Helm exercise, I guess they call it. When their stated objective is to move around in America and not be detected by Americans, do you see a problem with that? I see a big problem with that. I don't think that's a legitimate thing for our government to be doing. And as we're looking at this film footage from Fort Lauderdale, where they did their unannounced exercise last night, we see people being herded up into white vans and driven off. Is that what we want in our country? I don't want that in our country. We need to understand that when the technology changes, it only makes people, it only exacerbates the evil human nature, the evil aspects of power. We need to understand that with DARPA's powerful technology, they are concentrating power into the hands of a few people. That's what's so dangerous about these special forces operations. Donald Rumsfeld wanted a smaller army when they went to Afghanistan and Iraq. They wanted to use special forces with high-tech weapons. It wasn't very effective. They eventually did the troop surge, but that's the goal. And let me tell you, if you look at these nightmare weapons that DARPA is creating, many of which you don't know about. Some of them they let us know about, but they're far beyond that. There's a lot of secret stuff that they have that you don't know anything about. When you combine that with special forces, it is truly, truly an awesome military and something that is totally out of our control. This is a black ops military that's being created. These are the boots on the ground for the CIA and the NSA, for the secret surveillance state, where we can't know anything that they're doing. That's the way these people operate. We should be very afraid of a government like that. Let's play this clip from, it was about 2 years ago, I think, when, or 2013, we did this report. Let's play this where they're talking in L.A. about why they trained in urban areas.
Special Military Operation Forces, in conjunction with the LAPD, conducting some military maneuvers that had many people wondering what is going on.
A Black Hawk helicopter and 4 OH-6s, or Little Birds, flew over the city. Duran says the military picks environments based on what they might be facing in the near future.
If it's a mountainous terrain, then they go to mountains. If it's a desert terrain, they use the desert.
Also, what we saw here tonight in downtown Los Angeles has been seen in Miami and in Boston.
Yeah, that's right. You notice what he said? Let's hold it right there. You heard what the guy from the military said. We're going to train to fight and we're going to train to fight in the mountains if we're going to be fighting in the mountains, or in the desert, we're going to train in the desert. So they're fighting not just an urban environment, they're fighting in an American urban environment. That's a very important distinction to understand there.
Here in hostile Texas, it will involve the Green Berets, the Navy SEALs, and the 82nd Airborne. The Houston Chronicle is reporting that these soldiers will attempt to blend in with the population in an effort to test the effectiveness of their infiltration techniques. And residents will be asked to report suspicious activity during the exercise. This is directly involving unwitting members of the civilian population. 17 different cities here in Texas will see an Army presence during the exercise. And don't forget that they said that Texas, Utah, and even portions of Southern California were hostile territories. And the U.S. Army has failed to acknowledge or failed to address why we're being called hostile. But the exercise moves on, and it will take place this summer on the streets of America.
Jade Helm troops to operate undetected amongst civilian population. And, of course, the military people and the vets are not buying any of it. They're not stupid. You can read about how it's to get the hearts and minds and how to get the public used to working and the local police working with the military. I mean, everybody who's been in the military knows about the secret EOD program going on for 18 years. Their whole ordnance disposal, quote, the Army is going to show up to defuse a bomb. But then you get the internal agreements. It's for everything from warrant service to checkpoints with military personnel in nondescript blue jumpsuits, just like the Army Ranger called in and said they were wearing EPA blue jumpsuits. It's always blue or tan jumpsuits. And it might say EPA, it might say police, it might say Park Service. Training with the police, training with locals in plain clothes, quote, doing suspicious activities, is to train the police to work with the military in covert operations and to condition the military to accept it and to condition the public to accept it. And then when we cover it and talk about it, they practice the PSYOP in real time, putting out disinformation. I can see the script from Army Times to military.com to Stars and Stripes to Bloomberg to Daily Beast to Vice to the Houston Chronicle, and no exaggeration today. You go search Jade Helm. There are now hundreds of articles, and in almost all of them, yours truly is being demonized. Jones, who's warned of an imminent takeover for decades, keeps claiming it's going to happen, but of course it never does. No, it never does. Checkpoints, TSA, open spying, highway dividers being put up nationwide, open manuals that the number one enemy is veterans and gun owners and Christians. I mean, come on. This is the PSYOP.
That's right, one big PSYOP, and I wanted to get Joe Biggs' take on all this. We got the Navy SEALs, the Green Berets, 82nd Airborne, all operating undercover within the civilian population. Why should we be concerned about that?
Well, the biggest concern is the fact that, like we've said, it is a PSYOP. It is a mission to help condition people to seeing the ground troops. But one of the scary things about it is, in Texas, a lot of people are going to be armed. Regardless of the fact that if we hadn't spoken about this, this might not be as big as it is. We probably helped save lives by doing this, because just imagine being at home and hearing helicopters flying overhead and rounds being shot off, doors being kicked in. People are going to grab their guns and do the normal.
And they're already warning people that that's what they could expect.
Yeah.
They're going to say you're going to hear loud noises. They're going to see suspicious activity. They're asking civilians to report suspicious activity. And we're taking a lot of heat for this, just for reporting all this. You in particular, they're really attacking you, the Stars and Stripes, mainstream media, the U.S. Army, just for reporting on this. I want to read to you a little bit what the Houston Chronicle said. They characterize our response to this drill as an example of ultra-right-wing fears of a government takeover in the Lone Star State. They say that we are completely overreacting to all this. What do you say to that?
Well, I don't think we're overreacting whatsoever. I think we are doing what we need to do to bring attention to this entire operation, because, like I said, if people aren't warned, they're going to have that natural reaction when they hear something like that. So I think we've actually done a service to the people to help bring attention to this and expose the fact that this will be going on. This will actually help stop something from happening, just so people can be aware of what's going on, don't you think?
Well, exactly. And what about how they say that these exercises were meant for overseas operations?
That's one thing that I think is the biggest load of, crap in the whole thing, because we've seen time and time again all these different urban warfare training centers popping up, AP Hill, the one up in North Carolina that the Marine Corps uses, churches, soccer fields, all this stuff. You train in an area that you're going to fight over in your theater of operation, and these places look more and more like urban America, and now they're moving off of a government installation that we spend, quite frankly, millions of dollars on taxpayer money to build these installations for the soldiers to train and fight, or to train to go overseas for. Why do we now need to leave these government facilities that were spent and bought and paid for that? Why do we have to bring that into our backyards? Why do we need to work with the civilian population and local law enforcement to get that training done? Because the times I was in, we just hire some people, or you take another unit who's not training and you use them as what's called Op 4. Those are the guys who play the bad guys. So you don't need to bring this kind of training into America's backyard.
That's right. And we have leaked Army documents, Army training documents that make it perfectly clear that they plan at some point to have martial law right here in the continental United States. There's the leaked 2012 U.S. Army Military Police Training Manual, for example. It's entitled Civil Disturbance Operations, and in it, it describes how soldiers will be ordered to confiscate firearms and kill American dissidents. It says it right there in the Army manual, folks, and it goes on to say that prisoners would be detained in temporary internment camps and re-educated to gain a new appreciation of U.S. policies. Wow. So what do you say, Biggs? Do you think you and I need to be put in internment? We need to be re-educated on U.S. policies?
So is that part of what the Hillary Clinton fun camps are for the adults? Or
maybe
whatever?
That's it. Maybe
that's camps. How it's all rolling out. Jade Helm and then the Hillary Clinton fun camps at all.
Well,
good evening. It's a military mission in North St. Louis. Heavily armored vehicles are rolling into town, and while they come in peace, there are all kinds of rumors about why they are here. News Channel 5's Casey Nolan is live somewhere in St. Charles County, where he got an up-close look at the military vehicles. Casey?
Yeah, Mike, in order to get that up-close look, we've agreed not to say exactly where in St. Charles County we are tonight and where these vehicles will be parked overnight. The Army doesn't want that information to be made public for security reasons, but we can tell you why they are here. Now, this may not be such a huge deal that these rigs are in town if not for the speculation that was coming via the internet today. St. Louis police first put out the word that people may see these armored security vehicles in their neighborhood, especially near the Army Reserve Armory in North St. Louis on Goodfellow. But that was about all the information they released. On the KSTK Facebook page in just a few hours, we had more than 100 people weighing in on what was going on, with comments ranging from people saying they would stop and salute if they saw the vehicles to others worried this was the beginning of martial law. Well, it turns out this is a group of military police in from Fort Meade, Maryland, and they are here to train members of the 354th MP Company here in St. Louis on how to drive these rigs, a military's driver's ed of sorts, if you will, on the highways and on city streets. They are not loaded, they are not armed in any way, but the Army says that does not mean they aren't dangerous.
That vehicle is over 32,000 pounds. If they see that vehicle, it is harmless, but they need to know to stay away from it. We don't mind you all looking at it, but please stay away. Every day while we're out riding around, we get hundreds of people taking pictures and filming us, and a lot of people even swerving in our lane.
In fact, they were on Interstate 44 today coming in from Fort Leonard Wood. They say they had one man trying to drive and take pictures at the same time. They had a kind of a last-minute unintended class in evasive maneuvers to avoid a wreck. So they're warning, be careful around what is an unusual sight in St. Louis, which you may see between now and next Friday when this training is complete. Live in St. Charles County, Casey Nolan, News Channel 5.